Hello and welcome to this second video about the Prelude and Wordsworth. Um, and this is the first question that Wordsworth asks us through this poem. Is there a God or is there only nature? And that's a view, a religious view really, that has a name. It's called Pantheism. Pan comes from the Greek meaning all and theism meaning God. And the view is twofold. It can be interpreted both ways. One is that God is identical with nature. There exists nothing which is outside of God, and therefore nature is the same as God. Or you can flip that on its head and say, well, actually, it can be viewed as the rejection of God as distinct from nature. In other words, nature is everything, and there is no need to imagine a God. So viewed this way, the opening of the poem is a celebration of nature. One summer evening led by her, and here nature is being personified, so her is nature, I found a little boat tied to a willow tree. The willow is a tree with hanging branches which are soft, gentle, and we get this idea of nature being soft and gentle within a rocky cove. So even where nature is hard and rocky, it's gentle. This is a cove we're talking about, an enclosure somewhere that the protagonist here, Wordsworth, in his autobiographical role as a boy, feels safe, and so does the boat. So it's at home, its usual home. The boat itself is personified, kept safe by nature. And then Wordsworth comes along. Straight I unloosed her chain. And what's interesting is nature has brought him here in order to get the boat, as though nature is his destiny, and then the boat is his destiny. And nature's got some kind of mission for him or a quest for him, something he's got to do. And this is part of the romantic genre, like a knight's quest. Here it's done not quite ironically. What he's suggesting is that ordinary moments in life are full of meaning and full of passion. So just this casual unloosening of the chain is giving liberty to the boat, and by association, giving liberty to the boy. So, and stepping in, pushed from the shore. It was an act of stealth. So he knows here that he must be doing something wrong, but nature has led him to do it. And so he's acting with nature's approval, even though he's doing something that he knows he shouldn't. And this gives him a troubled pleasure. So he's pleased, but also feeling a bit guilty about it. Nor without the voice of mountain echoes did my boat move on. So very odd use of double negative here as nor without. So what he means is with the voice of mountain echoes, his boat moved. So he could hear the echoes of the mountains as his oars struck the water, so that the noise reverberates across the lake. And we don't know at this stage whether it's menacing or delightful. Is it troubled or is it pleasurable? Leaving behind her still, so he's left nature alone here and abandoned her. On either side, small circles glittering idly in the moon. So again, nature is associated with romance here. The moon gazing down on him as though it's a female goddess, until they melted all into one track of sparkling light. So nature here is magical. It's transforming the moon's light uh, into something that has melted into the lake's surface. And you can imagine the reflection of the moon appearing so magical to him. So at this stage, nature seems perfect. He seems at one with it, almost seduced by it, and she is looking after him. So this use of the word lead is really revealing. So for those of you who don't know, the Lord's Prayer is the prayer taught by Jesus. And this is the King James Version, and it has this interesting idea Forgive us our trespasses, the things that we do wrong, the trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass, do wrong against us, and lead us not into temptation. And this is always really a curious thing to have in a prayer, the idea that the Lord God would actually tempt people and present them with evil choices in order to test them. So when we look at it this way, nature is deliberately tempting the young Wordsworth to steal the boat, um, tempting him to do something wrong. And this temptation is linked to the feminine, the sparkling light of the moon, the soft sounds that you got with the assonance, with the repeated I sounds, circles glittering idly in, very soft, gentle, feminine sounds. Um, so in the initial stage of the poem, uh, it's rather seductive, very feminine, and this is an echo of Eve, who seduces Adam in the Garden of Eden story. If you don't know it, look it up. When she offers him the fruit of a knowledge of good and evil. And so this is a kind of parallel of that story where the young Wordsworth is experiencing this knowledge of good and evil. And that's why you have this kind of oxymoron here about the troubled pleasure. So now the whole of nature takes on a feminine form. So he's looking up at the stars and the grey sky, and then a craggy ridge. And where we might expect a craggy ridge to be a kind of masculine image, like looking like some old man, he doesn't do that. He personifies it next as a woman. So here it is. She was an elfin pinnace. That's interesting. I've always read this as pinnacle, as in peak, as in the craggy ridge, but I've just realised it's not. A pinnace is a small sailing boat, uh, usually with sails. Here, it's made even smaller by being like an elf. Um, but again, this is nature placing the boat in front of him, uh, and it represents her. Nature has put this boat there for him to take lustily. The use of the word lustily here, of course, brings us back to the idea of lust and temptation. I'll deal with that more fully in my next video, but you get the idea that nature here is personified as a woman and one that's interested in seducing the young Wordsworth. And there appears to be an unspoken contract between the young Wordsworth and nature through the image of this boat. So the boat went heaving through the water like a swan. So swans are famous for their beauty. Obviously, they are white and a symbol of innocence, just like this innocent young boy. And perhaps Wordsworth also has in mind the idea of the swan being loyal to its mate. They're famous for being loyal to each other, and the pairs meet up again year after year after year and breed together. So there's this idea that nature and Wordsworth are mated like a swan and its mate, and that bond can never be broken. Okay, so far we've got this feminine view of nature, but then suddenly everything changes. So then we have the horizon's bound is broken by this huge peak, which is black and huge. So this mountain, huge is repeated twice, and it upreared its head. It feels much more masculine. Um, let's have a look at some more clues. We might associate lots of the words to describe this peak as masculine. It's grim in shape, it's towering, and it's blocking out the stars. It seems to have its own purpose, and it strode after me. This personification of it, of this mountain peak, striding purposefully after him, just feels very merry, very male. Um, Indeed, women of the time wouldn't really be able to stride, encumbered as they were with Victorian clothing. You simply couldn't stride in that sort of dress with their hoops and their finery and their heels. So it's definitely a masculine sort of image we've got here. And it's as though part of nature is jealous of him, and it's a masculine part, and it seems to be accusing him of something. We don't yet know what. We can infer it, though, through this sibilance here, through the silent water stole my way. So if we go back to Wordsworth's time, to steal your way meant to go really quietly and softly, but also the other meaning of steal is the one that we have now. It's the image of him as a thief. He has stolen the boat that nature has put in front of him. Now, this is the feminine temptation that's been given to him, and then there's masculine punishment, which is a reminder, an echo, if you like, of how God has punished Adam and Eve for Eve's original sin of being tempted to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge and good and evil. Now, this kind of masculine threat of the looming peak that appeared to be striding after him has ruined nature. So it's simply given him a darkness which is like solitude, or it's like being deserted, as though nature has been taken from him. There are no familiar shapes, there's no images of trees. Nature has just been robbed of all the things that he associates with nature. There are no trees, there's no sea, there's no sky, and the green fields now have no colour in them. It's a black and white world, devoid of pleasure, but replaced with huge and mighty forms, which he associates with men. He says they're not like living men, but it's definitely masculine. And we get this idea that he's in a turning point here, or an initiation, moving from boyhood to manhood, and he's confused as to why he feels so guilty in the pleasure he's taken in nature, which he now associates with the feminine. And these move slowly through the mind by day, and were a trouble to my dreams. So at night time he keeps trying to dream of this moment, but the dreams keep getting interrupted by these masculine forms, and he can't name them, they're just huge like the mountain. So we might infer from this that his boyhood gives way to manhood when he becomes a poet, and when he becomes a poet, he has the ability to envisage nature again and to paint it full of colour and to describe the trees and the sea and the sky. So nature returns to him through his poetry, and he begins to worship nature again. So if we return to our original definition of pantheism, God is identical with nature, or there is no need to think of God at all. Nature is like a God. I think what we've seen is that the poem falls with this side of pantheism. So God is in nature. Nature includes the feminine, that seduction of beauty in nature, but God is there like an Old Testament God, ready to punish him for giving in to his temptation and desires. Well, it won't take much imagination to see this also as a journey of sexual awakening, and that will be the subject of my next video. So I hope you found that useful. Do subscribe if you want more, and look out for that next video.